Welcome to the Thriving Christian Artist, the podcast where we hope you connect with God to bust through the roadblocks that have held you back for years, create the work you love, and really live the life you know God created you to live as an artist in His kingdom. I'm Matt Thomas, your host. Let's get started. Well, hey there, my friend. It's Matt, and I'm so glad that you're with me on the podcast today. I've got a new friend that I want to introduce to you. Her name is Kylie Odetta. She's actually a musician, writer, artist, uber creative. Listen, this young woman is a powerhouse, and you're going to love hearing her story. And one of the things that I think really sets her apart, and not just because she's uber talented, because absolutely she is, but is the level of maturity that she's come to in her own walk with the Lord and understanding how real transformation happens in her life. She has done so much. In fact, started recording and writing songs when she was like 8 years old. Hello, she's 22 now. Done so many incredible things, but like a lot of us, hit some major roadblocks in her life. And she learned quickly through those roadblocks and through moving through those difficulties how to begin to experience real transformation that the kingdom can promises us, in our life. And she's now taking that transformation and sharing that with others. And it's just so exciting. I'm really, really glad to bring her interview to you today here on the podcast. Now, before I jump into that, I want to obviously just give a shout out to my podcast listeners, all you guys that are subscribing every week and sharing and listening and writing reviews is always a huge, huge blessing. So I want to read one today from Where Water Glows. What a name is that? And the title of the review is Create with Vision. They say, I've been listening to this podcast for almost 2 years. It's such a wonderful, healing, positive outlook on the kingdom. I'm so grateful for Matt and him sharing his love for raising up an army of artists. I've found my creativity again, and I've learned to create with the Lord instead of for Him or even myself or others. I've let go of limiting beliefs and my mindset has shifted in an incredible way. Walking with the Holy Spirit has been such a journey. Thank you, Matt, for your insight and your heart for others. Well, golly, what a story that is. Listen, I'm a bottom line guy. I'm a results oriented guy. I love the process, but I love to see a process that brings results. And when I read a review like that, and I'm seeing this person say, I found my creativity again. I'm getting lit up on the inside. I've learned to create with the Lord instead of just acting like a slave and just a doer all the time. I'm enjoying the creative process again. Listen, nothing brings me greater joy than to be able to know that that is the effect that it's having on this person and hopefully so many tens of thousands of you that are listening to the podcast all over the world. So Where Water Glows, thank you so much for your podcast review. And if you've not taken a chance to review the podcast, please do. You can click the show notes right down below and find out some of the freebies that you'll get when you actually review the podcast on Instagram or Facebook or on the the podcast app that you're listening on. And we just love to say thank you any way we can. So, all right, well, hey, listen, I'm going to get out of the way and you're going to love this interview with my new friend, Kylie Odetta. Well, hey, my friend, I'm so glad that you're with me on the podcast today. I've got a new friend with me, Kylie Odetta, who's from Greenville, South Carolina, incredible artist, musician, creative. And Kylie, I'm so glad to have you on with me today.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for chatting with me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love hearing stories of transformation and what God has done in the lives of creative people. And we're going to be able to jump into your story a little bit today just to hear all that the Lord's done in your heart, your creative journey over a number of years. But for those who may be just getting to know you, why don't you let us know who you are, where you're from, what you're doing creatively, and what your life looks like right now.
Yeah, so what's up, you guys? My name is Kylie Odetta, and I am 22 years old. I am a singer-songwriter, voice actor, artist. I've been writing music since I was 8 years old and playing shows since I was 11, and really pursuing a career since that time as well.
Wow.
So over the years, I've toured nationally, internationally. I've released many music projects, written many songs, and it's been the most fun. It's been an amazing, challenging, but mostly awesome journey.
I love that. Now, are you an only child? Or you have brothers and sisters or what?
I have an older brother. He's 1 year older than me. He just got married this past year, so that's super exciting. But yeah, we're really close. It's just me and him.
Awesome. Awesome. I've got a sister too. We're equally creative. I'm a musician and visual artist and writer, and she's a pastry
Yeah.
chef in Chicago. So
Oh,
she,
wow.
yeah. So are your
That's
parents
amazing. Yeah,
creative?
my brother's a graphic designer and artist as well, and he actually writes a little bit as well. And then my
Nice.
dad is a graphic artist, illustrator, and a songwriter. And my mom is a painter and very creative in business and with ideas and innovation. So my entire family is very creative as well.
That's so awesome because I think for so many creative people, when you're coming up as a teenager or whatever, you start to kind of feel this creative thing bubbling in your heart. And if you're not in a family that's either overtly creative or at least welcoming to that, that can really get squashed. And it sounds like that you had a
Yeah.
really welcoming environment where that was encouraged.
Yeah, I was really fortunate. My family from day one, when I said, I want to be a singer at 11 years old, they were like, all right, cool.
Go
Let's
for
do it. Like, go
it.
for it. They would drive me around to coffee shops and all of that. But I did have some friends and people at my school who were also interested in music, and they didn't necessarily get that same support from their families. And I saw how hard that was on them. So it does make a big difference to have people in your life who support you, whether that's your family or just a friend or something like that.
So did you start taking your creativity? I mean, you said 8 years old. So like, what was your daily, weekly kind of practice of your, honing your skills and really jumping into that?
Yeah.
What did that look like as an 8-year old for you?
Right. Well, so I actually technically started playing piano before I was 8 years old. I started taking lessons when I was six, but I didn't write my first song till I was eight. So I continued taking lessons. I actually quit at one point. I think it was before, like when I was like 7 or 8. I had just started, and I didn't like my teacher, and so I was like, I don't want to take lessons anymore. But then
Exactly.
a year later, I came back to my parents. I was like, okay, like I really do want to play piano, and they were like, really? And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, okay. And so they signed me up for lessons again. So I did that weekly. The songwriting was very just natural and kind of in the spur of the moment whenever ideas would come to me. At the time, I didn't spend a lot of like effort training like how to figure out how to
Yeah.
songwrite. I just went with it and enjoyed it, and my parents were like, cool, like we don't, awesome, go for it. And so I would just write whenever things came to me as a kid. I wrote about like my dead cat wanting to work in a castle, all these little 8-year-old things. And then as obviously I like kept doing it more and more, then as I started to get more passionate about it, I was like, okay, I think I'd like to try vocal lessons now, and I think I'd like to learn more and talk to other people who are writing songs and record. And my dad luckily had a friend who's another like local Greenville musician, who had like a studio makeshift set up in his attic, and so that's where I recorded my very first CD.
How awesome.
And it was just, I learned a lot through that process because I had never done anything like that, and he was really helpful to me at the very start of my journey. And then it just went from there.
That's so awesome. I talk to so many creatives, and I think about for my own journey, one of the things that I think as creative people we're blessed with and also struggle with is this constant barrage of ideas for books, songs, visual art pieces, whatever it is. What do you
Oh
do?
God, yeah.
I know, right? What do you do on a regular basis to kind of capture those things? Because I think it's in the
Yeah.
capturing of those and the stewarding of those that I think God can really begin to use those and develop them in our life. But if we don't do that, they just kind of flit away just as quickly as they came, right?
Yeah. Yeah, well, I think it's funny you said like books and audio and all these things. Like I have 4 book ideas right now that I've started on, and then I haven't finished them because God told me, okay, that's not the time for book writing right now.
Yeah.
But what I do is like, so I have many ideas as well. I'm a writer primarily, like obviously songs, but I just love poetry, books, all of the above. And so I kind of have to like have regular talks with God of like, what are you wanting me to focus on right now?
Right.
Because I do have all these ideas. I also have like a youth program that I take into the schools. I have my music, obviously. I have writing, poetry. I want to put out a poetry book as well as novels and all these things. And I'm like, God, how am I supposed to do it all? Like, I want to do it all. He's like,
Yeah.
okay, you can, but not all at the same time
Exactly.
necessarily. And so he's like, he basically, I just kind of try to listen and tune in of what am I supposed to be doing right now? And I feel very strongly he's calling me to music right now at this time in my life, playing shows, releasing all the songs that I have written. I'm last year I was kind of in this like create phase where it was just like blah, get it all out, create, lots of music, lots of things. And this year, the start of the year anyways, has been finish strong. Get all of these things you've created out into the world. And so that's what I've been focusing on, is releasing a lot of the music I created last year.
That's so great. Now, I'm interested for you because obviously you love the Lord, you're going after him with your whole heart, all of that. When did you start to make the connection that maybe God wanted to use your creativity, your creative expression kind of as a vehicle maybe to do what he was going to do in and through your life? Was that a natural thing early on,
Yeah.
or was there like a kind of aha moment that happened? Or?
So I think a little bit of both. Like I knew off the bat that what I had with music and songwriting was not just of my own like ability, because it came so randomly and so naturally.
Right.
And I was like, I don't even know how these words come out of me sometimes. I genuinely, it's a gift from God, and I feel so thankful that
Mm,
he gave that to me, you know. But then it was, yes, a honing of my craft and deciding, okay, do I want to continue on with this gift he's given me? And continue to become better, or how can I relate to people more, or whatever. And so it kind of like was just this natural thing. I always knew that this was a gift from him, and so I felt compelled to share it in thanks to him. But then what happened as I started to share my music, and specifically there was a moment, I was playing my song, Promised Myself, which was from when I was 16 at a coffee shop. And somebody came up to me. This is the first time it had ever happened to me. Someone came up to me after the show and said, you know, that song you played, Promised Myself, that described exactly what I was going through. And it helped me through a really hard time. And I've never
mm,
felt so connected to a song before. And I was just like taken aback, because I was thinking, you know, here I am processing my own emotions, but this is helping somebody else.
yeah.
What? Like it
Yeah.
blew my mind, and it changed me forever. And then I started to see the power music had to heal and to connect to people. And so since then I've witnessed that many times as I share my stories and my songs, and other people are able to also heal, or you know, find joy or find power or whatever it is through listening. And so it's kind of like both. It started off as just like, wow, this is awesome. And then it was like, whoa, there were these defining moments where God was like, this is important, and I need you to keep
Mm.
sharing what I'm pouring through you.
Yeah, I love that because the Lord's, it's like our deepest place of woundedness is often the greatest place of transformation that God will not only do in us, but do through us. And I love that about your
Absolutely.
story because, we talked about that just a little bit briefly as we got introduced. But, so many people see artists and see people that do what we do visually or that sort of thing, and they see you kind of like in performance mode, and yet they don't know the backstory, the stuff that went on. I had that in my own life, just lots of junk, sexual abuse as a
Yeah.
kid, and performance
Yeah.
orientation and fear and shame and all this junk to get over and get through. And yet God's used that,
Yeah.
in my life in really cool ways, not only to heal me, but also to bring transformation in other people's lives. And I love that
Yes.
at 22 years old, you are in touch with that reality in your life, because not everything's been
Mm.
perfect for you. I mean, you've had some
No.
real difficult struggles that you've gone through. I mean, talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. So, you know, I think it's funny because without God, sometimes these painful situations, they just remain this heavy part of your life. But with God, every single painful situation has the opportunity to be turned for good, and for your good, but also other people's good. And
Yeah.
so I really truly got to see that a couple years ago when I went through a very dark time where I was battling anxiety and intrusive thoughts. And it kind of, I had experienced that for a lot of my life, but I didn't have the vocabulary to say, this is what I'm experiencing, you know?
Right.
And so had kind of just popped up here or there, but then I just thought it was this weird thing. I thought I was super sensitive, which I am. and, uh, and then, but it
Surprise,
was like all of a
right?
sudden, right? Surprise. Us creatives usually are.
I
Um,
know.
but it was funny because all of a sudden it was like it was just overwhelming, and it was like not stopping. It's like these thoughts were just attacking me day after day, minute after minute, and it just all kind of rushed in really heavily at once over the period of a summer. And I just remember feeling like, why is this happening? What
Mm.
have I done like to deserve this? How do I get out of this? I was just so like slowly just lost a lot of my personality, my confidence, like, and I just could not find the way out of my own mind, it felt like. And so during that time though, like I had some really close people I could count on. I saw a therapist, and one of my good friends who's a fellow believer, she encouraged me. She was like, do you ever speak scripture out loud, like over yourself? Or do you ever,
Mm.
pray in the morning out loud? And I was like, not really. I mean, I read things, I do a devotion. And she was like,
Right.
well, maybe just try like, finding some specific verses about the mind, about fear, and speak them out loud, because I do that every morning and I plead the blood of Jesus over my mind. And it really helps me, and it's, renews our mind. And I was like,
Yeah.
you know what? I got nothing left to lose at this point. So
Why not? Why not?
let's try it. Let's try it. And because I was just feeling so down in the dumps, and I was like, I'll give it a shot, and because I had faith in God, but I felt like I wasn't experiencing that freedom I knew I could. And so I tried this, and specifically I did multiple verses, but the one that I did the most often was 2 Timothy 1:7, which is, for I was not given a spirit of fear, but a
Yeah.
spirit of power and love and sound mind. And so the power, love, and sound mind, that's not how I was feeling at all. But I was like, okay, this is what God says is true about me. And I'm going to take him at his word and hope that it works. And it did, over time, I saw my spirit rise up to meet that truth as I believed it over what I was feeling.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, it took a long time, but I saw that whole situation turn for my good, and I ended up being stronger coming out of it. And then on the other level of that, as I started to share about my experience and I saw other people being helped because of my vulnerability, then it was like double the blessing. I was like, wow, like something that one was so horrific for me to experience at the time and that I didn't understand is now being used for good. I
Yeah.
would go back through it again for that sake. And that's like,
Mm.
you would never say that in the moment, but now looking back, I'm like, so many people have been impacted by that, and myself included. And I would not change a thing about my story for that fact.
I love that because I think one of the things that, but I mean, for me, I know this is true, and I think it would be what you're saying as well. Most Christians grow up, you get saved, you go to church, you love Jesus the best way you know how, and yet nobody ever teaches you how that transformation actually happens in your life. That is, how does that start getting appropriated in your life every day? And it's through, like you said, the renewing of your mind. Don't be conformed to
Yeah.
the pattern of this world. Be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And I think learning, I know for me, and maybe you can speak to this, but learning to realize that every thought that comes through my head is not necessarily for me. It's certainly not the Lord.
Yes.
You know,
So
that
important.
I can either take that. I always teach that, thoughts are like seeds. So we can take them and plant them in the ground of our heart
Yeah.
and they'll come up and produce fruit. Or you got to take that thought captive and say, not so much. I'm getting rid
Yeah.
of that. So
Yep.
how have you balanced that in
It's
your
so
life? Just
true.
realizing the kind of taking the drama out of the thought battle.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh my gosh, that was the biggest probably help in my journey to overcoming those thoughts and anxiety, because I gave each thought equal weight, and we
mm,
just simply don't have to do that.
yeah,
Like not all thoughts are equal. Like you said, like there will be thoughts that come in from just products of like the information we take in on a daily basis in the
yeah,
world that we have no help to support ourselves against. It's like things are just coming at us all the time through social media, through billboards, through TV. And so that's one thing, coming at us. Then we've got the enemy who's speaking lies maybe to us or in our vulnerabilities. And then we've got God, and then we've got ourselves. And so it's like not all of those get to have equal say about who we are. And they don't all
yeah,
mean something about who we are. But that's what a lot of us do, myself included at the time. Any thought that popped in my head, I thought, well, this must be true, or this must
yeah,
mean something very powerful about me. And it's just like, no, that's just simply not true.
yeah,
And so when I began to detach the power from that, from those thoughts by thinking, you know what, I can compartmentalize. And if this doesn't bring me peace, if it doesn't line up with God's word, I simply don't have to keep it or take it as true.
Right.
And so I started to, like you just said, detach the emotion from these
Mm.
thoughts and almost prepare myself for when they would come by saying, you know what, these thoughts are probably going to pop up again. But when they do, I don't have to be so afraid of them. I can say, hello, random thought, goodbye,
Yeah.
random thought, and visualize them kind of passing by and not having such a emotional impact on me, or not taking them to heart that they mean something personal about me. And it's almost like seeing your thoughts play through like credits on a movie screen or something, rather
Yeah.
than, like you just said, taking them and letting them be seeded down into your heart, when they just don't necessarily need to be.
Did I read on your blog, or maybe it was one of your videos, which all your media is fabulous. And we'll give everybody your
Thanks.
website here in just a minute. But did you, I think it was you that said you almost thought of them like they were clouds passing
Yeah.
by in the sky. And
Yep.
I'm like, I just love that, because it's like, that's such a peaceful way to see that. Like, nope, I'm
Yeah.
not looking at that one. I'm just going to let him just
Yeah.
ride on by.
Yeah, it's true. Like if you look up at the sky on a partly cloudy day, you can see the clouds moving and they're just kind
Yeah.
of floating by. And
Yeah.
it's like our thoughts have that same ability to do that if we would see them that way. Like they
Yeah.
don't have to come and get stuck in your
Yeah.
head. You can just let them go on, because we have tons of thoughts a day, and they just don't all need to get stuck in there.
That is so good. I mean, talk about how that understanding, obviously that's been a process for you to get to, and it is for everybody, but how is that process of taking every thought captive, letting those other ones go, cultivating the ones that are from the Lord? How has that changed your level of motivation, execution in what you're doing, your goal setting? I mean, because
Yeah.
I know for many people, that is an absolute game changer. If you can get the mind game
Yeah.
tone down and get all that craziness out of there, all of a sudden, hearing God's voice and clarity about what he's
Yeah.
got for our journey becomes really, really a lot more simple.
Yeah. Well, so a big thing for me is like I would get stuck in my head so much that I would end up paralyzed and stopping. I wouldn't do anything about, like, what I felt God was calling me to do or share. I wouldn't create art. I wouldn't do these things that I knew I loved, because I was like, I felt like I had to resolve what was happening in my mind before I could go out and do these creative things again.
Mm,
And something that I learned, like two things that God kind of like spoke, and that I spoke as he shared them with me, is one is like, God, I trust you and I let go. So it comes down to like, can I trust him enough to let
yeah.
this go without figuring it out?
Yeah.
Without,
Intentionally. Yeah.
coming
That's
to the
good.
end of why did I think this? Why do I feel this way? Da, da, da. It's like, maybe I'll find out, maybe I won't, but can I trust you to let it go right now and move forward with what you have for me?
Mm,
And then another one is the phrase like, figure or live it out. Don't always try and figure it out. Um, because that's, again, like I feel like when we get in our head, we just get stuck, like sometimes physically, like we don't keep doing things that we know bring us joy or are going to help the world or whatever.
right.
We don't continue on in our career because we feel so stuck inside. And so something that God like showed me over the past few years is just like, Kylie, live it out. Let me show you who I am as you do that, as you step on the field day after day, and you'll see me come through to meet you there. You don't always have to figure it out before you take that next step.
Yeah.
And so that was a big thing for me, because when I started to be able to do that, like if I started feeling a little bit unresolved or anxious of this, I'd be like, you know what? That doesn't have to keep me from writing this song. That doesn't have to keep me from playing this show. Like I can do these things and trust God. And every time I have, he has come through and met me there. And so it's
Yeah.
like, as you take those steps, you'll see him come through, and it builds your faith to do it again and again, so that then as these things pop up in the future, it's like, oh yeah, bye. We're moving on. We're going forward with what God has for me?
I love it. I love it. I don't know how much you know about what we do at the Thriving Christian Artists and all that, but in 2009, God called me to raise up an army of artists all over the world. And we've been doing that through events and our podcast and all the stuff that we do and everything. But one of the things the Lord showed me back then is that he was not raising up a movement of artists all over the world of just more talented people, but that he was
Mhm.
raising up sons and daughters who really knew
Yeah.
who they are and their identity firmly secured in him, and that he was going to be, the one that was doing this. And I'm so thankful, Kylie, for you at 22 years old, that you are such a powerhouse in a great way of healing and wholeness and knowing who God's created you to be. Because you realize that, yeah, while we all want to be great at what we do skillfully and hone our craft and all that kind of stuff, our work has to speak, for itself. But that at the bottom
Yeah.
of all that, if our identity is jacked up and it's not in Christ and it's not rooted in who he says we are, it's all really just shifting sand. And
Yeah.
what would you say to somebody out there who is on that fence of thinking, I know I got some stuff in my heart that I need to deal with, but I really just want to
Mm.
get onto the important stuff, the marketing stuff and the business stuff and the how to make my
Mhm.
career as an artist or musician work. And I can
Yeah.
figure the other stuff out later. I just want to get onto the important stuff. What would you
Yeah,
say to
yeah.
them?
Honestly, I would say I've tried that and you'll end up burnt out.
Hello.
I have done that. I have done that in the past so many times where I get so focused on, the career side of things and checking off my lists and making sure I'm doing this and doing that. And I feel like it's just a constant resetting of your mind. Again, this concept of renewing your mind and placing the importance back on your relationship with God first. It says seek
Yeah.
first his kingdom and all these things will be added to you. When we put the cart before the horse and we go and try to do these things on our own and we're like, I'll deal with that later, I'm just going to keep pressing, we find ourselves maybe successful for a while, but then eventually, and again, speaking from personal experience, it starts to lose its flavor and it starts to not be as fun. And you kind of forget, why am I doing this? Because the thing that you loved is no longer fulfilling you because you've taken the heart and the why out of it, you know?
Yeah.
And so what I found is like when I am, secure in my relationship with God first, when I know my why, like why am I doing this interview? Why am
Yeah.
I releasing that song? Why am I going and touring 10 cities? It's like, is that because it's something I'm just like think I should do? Is it because it's something the world's like projecting that I should do? Or is it because there's a purpose that God has for it? And if you can say that it lines up with God's purposes, then you'll feel so much more fulfilled in doing it and have so much more joy anyways. So it's
Yeah.
like we've got to kind of like backpedal. So it's like, okay, wait, why am I doing this? Is this what God has for me? If it's yes, run full force and enjoy it. But if it's not, then, it's going to leave you feeling empty and burnt out at the end. So it's like, it's better to take that time to get yourself right with God and to get like your purpose aligned with your actions, so that it's just a win-win for you. You enjoy it and it helps other people and you don't end up feeling confused.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, Kylie, this has been so good to get to know you and hear your story a little more. I know folks are going to want to connect with you and hear your music and all the great things you're doing in the kingdom. So, what's the best place folks can connect with you online?
Yes, so I'm all over the place, but I primarily use Instagram the most often. So I'm on Instagram at Kylie Odetta. I have a website where you can find all my social links to. I'm on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, all that stuff. For listening to music, obviously YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, all the places I'm pretty much on there. So just type in Kylie Odetta, and if you find that I'm not on there, send me an email or something so I can get on there. But
Exactly.
yeah, just wherever, all over the internet, I'm there. You'll find me. So
I love it. I love it. Well, Kylie, it's been a real pleasure having you on today. And, I also want to say, I wish I could have your mama and daddy on the podcast because I know you have incredible parents. I don't know them, but I feel like I can tell you the kind of people they are just
yes,
by hearing
they're
what
amazing.
you have turned out to be as a person. And
Yeah. Oh, thank
wow,
you.
wow. So shout out to
Yeah,
mamas
I
and
mean, I'm
daddies
sure
out there
they'd love
too.
to. So seriously, if you want to talk to them, they will talk to you. You just be prepared.
I love it. I love it. Well, Kylie, thanks for being on today. What a joy. Hey, thanks so much for spending a few minutes with me today on the podcast. Listen, I hope it's been a huge encouragement to you on your journey as an artist. Hey, also, before you leave, make sure to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any of the other episodes of the Thriving Christian Artist podcast. And also, be sure to connect with me on Facebook, Instagram, or at my website, which is matttommymentoring.com. Until next time, remember, you were created to thrive. Bye-bye.